Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 97, Pain. Rain that had been falling for several days in a row have finally subsided, leaving the public roads utterly muddy. The Chu capital fell into a state of mourning. With the sudden death of the young Emperor Tianqian, rumors that the Marquis of Dingdu Xiaoqi had colluded with the vice-commander of the Jin Jiu who was also the northern judge, Shen Zequan, to assassinate the emperor with the intent to rebel spread like wildfire as whispers behind closed doors went around in Chu capital. As Emperor Tianqian did not have any imperial heir, the ministers presented a memorial to request the Empress Dowager to preside over the overall situation in place of the emperor. The Empress Dowager repeatedly excused herself on the grounds that the inner court must not interfere with state affairs. It was only after the commander-in-chief of the Jin Jiu, Han Cheng, kowtowed thrice in remonstration that the Empress Dowager was convinced to step in. The 8 great training divisions were back in charge of patrolling the Chu capital and its defenses. The streets of the capital these days were crawling with patrol squads all throughout the day and night. Common folks did not dare to venture outdoors while all the wine taverns and brothels kept their doors shut. It was as if the bustling scene of the Chu capital was a thing of the past. Even the color of the vermilion walls and glazed tiles in Chu capital looked washed out by the misty drizzle. Hai Lianji fainted several times when he wept before the coffin. He was now lying on the bed, unable to drink even a drop of medicine. His hair seemed to have turned entirely white overnight, and those spirited eyes of his that once gleamed with brilliance became dim and gloomy. They even looked particularly turbid and cloudy with all those tears he had shed. Teacher, Kong Qiu sat at the bottom with his head lowered and said, "You have to take your medication. Now that the realm is in turmoil, everyone is waiting for you to take the helm and steer the state towards stability once more. You must take care of your health." The tear streaks at the corners of Hai Lianji's eyes had not been fully wiped. His gaze drifted, and it was only after a long time that he spoke, "Take the helm and steer the state towards stability once more? Baran, there is nothing I can do any more to save the situation." The bamboo tube in the courtyard tapped gently against the rock in the stream, exposing the cracked lines. Rain fell soundlessly. Yet there was no way those scars could be covered up. Hai Lianji was too advanced in age. His vital energy had been worn out by the ups and downs of officialdom, and now, there were even signs that he might never recover from his illness. Sorrow overwhelmed Kong Qiu. He sat where he was, weeping with his face covered. How did it come to this? Han Cheng is a hypocrite who speaks honeyed words but has the malicious heart of a viper. He is petty and narrow-minded. Now that he has gained power, the entire imperial court of civil and military officials will be on tenterhooks. He forced Xiaoqi out, and so Libei is now without a shackle. From now on, Hai Lianji suddenly started coughing. He propped himself up and vomited out blood. For a moment, he could not hold back his emotions, and he cried in a hoarse voice as he held onto the edge of the bed, "From now on, our territory will be torn asunder and turbulent times will rise once again. The century-old empire of the Li clan will fall into ruins from here. I've sinned. I'm a sinner. This Hai Renchi have spent my entire life shamelessly advancing my own agenda and navigating official circles. Yet it was all to toil in vain for the benefit of these people. I. With a head full of ash-white hair, Hai Lianji hunched over and wailed in a voice so hoarse and so full of despair that it was a tragic sight to behold. "Teacher, teacher." Kong Qiu hastily came over to help him up, then looked back and shouted, "Men." The door curtain was lifted, but it was Yao Wenyu who entered. On seeing what was happening, he immediately kneeled on the footrest and disregarded the filth as he wiped the tears and blood for Hai Lianji. At the same time, he directed the attendant to draw water and rinse the handkerchief. Finally, he helped Hai Lianji lie down. After soothing him for a moment, he said to Kong Qiu in a soft voice, "Your Excellency, may I ask of you to wait outside, please?" Kong Qiu did not dare to disturb them any further and hurriedly retreated to wait outside. After a long time, the sound of Hai Lianji's cries receded. Yao Wenyu held the bowl in his hand and personally fed his teacher medicine. It was only after Hai Lianji fell into a drowsy sleep that he lifted the curtain and stepped out. Kong Qiu wanted to say something, but Yao Wenyu motioned for him to follow the attendant to the main hall first, while he himself made his way through the veranda to the back for a change of clean clothes. "Apologies for keeping you waiting, Your Excellency." Yao Wenyu got the attendant to serve tea and sat down below Kong Qiu. Kong Qiu held the teacup and was silent for a moment before he said, "Teacher has no son. I feel reassured with you here to take care of him. I shouldn't have brought up those matters earlier, as it ended up making him sad. Although teacher has returned home ill, he is still concerned about state affairs. Even if Your Excellency doesn't bring it up, he would still find it hard to dismiss it from his mind. It was better for him to cry it out than to bottle it all up in his heart." Yao Wenyu held up the teacup and stirred it a few times before saying, "The current situation is unstable and volatile. Teacher won't be able to rest for long anyway." Kong Qiu knew that Hai Lianji treated him like his own son. So, he did not hold back and said with a sigh, "His Majesty's passing is so sudden. We are now already in a disadvantageous position. In addition, the Han clan has control of military power in Chu capital, and at present, we are in an irreversible situation in which Her Majesty is in power and in control of the government. After this incident, what will Libe do in the future?" Yao Wenyu was naturally fair and he looked no different from porcelain as he held that teacup. He said, "The way things stand now, it's vital to discuss countermeasures to deal with the situation." Han Cheng's original position was that of the commander-in-chief of the Jin Yue. If he wants to overstep his authority and enter the Grand Secretariat to take charge, his only option would be to ask the Empress Dowager to issue an imperial edict, so he isn't exactly without leverage. Wei Huigu consumed poison and committed suicide because of the military provisions case. The temporary vacancy in the Grand Secretariat will thus have to be filled in by Your Excellency. With this, all the important affairs of the imperial court will still have to be deliberated over and endorsed by the various excellencies under teacher." Upon hearing this, Kong Qiu set down the teacup and humbly asked, "But the Empress Dowager is in charge of state affairs, and any changes in the Grand Secretariat is subjected to her whims and fancies. If she issued a change of people using Han Cheng as a pretext, then what should we do?" Yao Wenyu smiled and said, "The Empress Dowager being in charge of state affairs is a desperate measure to begin with. Her surname isn't Li, so the authority of acting on behalf of the Son of Heaven can't convince the public. The others don't matter, what's crucial is the Qi clan. Although Qi Zuyan may be indolent by nature and doesn't care about government affairs, she has the Qi clan's reputation for loyalty resting on her shoulder. She will never allow the Empress Dowager and Han Cheng to commit all kinds of atrocities in Chu capital. Since the Empress Dowager wants to win her over to her side, she won't go too far at this point in time. Rather than worry about the Empress Dowager's substitution attempt, Your Excellency might as well worry about Han Cheng's subsequent plans." Kong Qiu said, "Han Cheng went all out to ingratiate himself with the Empress Dowager. He has succeeded. In my humble opinion, it's just the opposite." Yao Wenyu lifted his eyes to look at the misty rain at the entrance. At this time, it indeed seems like Han Cheng has gained the favor of the Empress Dowager, but upon closer inspection of the situation, in the long run it's instead the Empress Dowager who is seeking connection with Han Cheng. The Empress Dowager is able to rise to power because the Emperor had no heir. The imperial court cannot be without a master, and it was out of a lack of options that everyone compromised and made concessions, but Great Zhou will definitely have a new Son of Heaven. The military power Han Cheng holds in his hands is the real thing. His daringness to lay an encirclement trap for Xiao Qiye to force him out and make his move in Mingli Hall is a clear indicator that he has backing and, therefore, has nothing to fear. "You mean?" Kong Qiu was shocked. "Han Cheng still has the imperial heir in his hands." Yao Wenyu drank the tea and said, "Emperor Guangcheng often ventured out of the palace to stay out overnight. It's hard to say whether there is an imperial heir. It's just the situation is already now at this stage. Even if Han Cheng doesn't have the imperial heir in his hands, he will think of every means possible to push someone out. Kong Qiu's heart went cold. He said, Han Cheng has soldiers and horses, and the Jinyi Wei to boot. The officials in the capital are all tied down by their own families and might not necessarily be willing to oppose him should a power struggle really break out. If he forcibly elects someone to sit on the dragon throne and rule the imperial court, we. Yao Wenyu, however, changed the topic and asked, has the imperial army already passed through Dan City? The imperial army had already passed through Dan City, but they had yet to reach the territory of Zongbo. Xiao Qiye made haste all the way. The soldiers and horses all needed to rest, so they made a stop midway. Shen Zequan was severely ill, with his old ailment and heartbreak acting up in tandem. He seemed to be conscious, but yet he was not. It was as if he was lying in a puddle of dreams, engulfed once again by the rainwater and filthy blood. Ever since the epidemic the last time, Xiao Qiye suspected that Shen Zequan had never attempted to recuperate and nurse himself back to health. Instead, the medicines he had consumed in his early years had now turned into a form of latent poison lurking in his body. Xiao Qiye did not dare to be negligent, so he made a stop and immediately went looking for a physician. Shen Zequan's head was in a muddle as the roaring in his ears persisted. He could hear Xiao Qiye's voice, yet he also seemed to hear teachers' shouts. He lay on the pillow. The few times he woke up, he thought that he was still in Duan province. He smelled the aroma of dishes, as if the one standing outside the door was his Xiniang, Hua Pingting. But he did not dare to move or look. He seemed to possess it all, but he still had nothing to his name. He thought he had killed off that part of himself, and that this mortal flesh would not shed any more tears. But he had been too young, too full of youthful arrogance and ignorance. That was only because he had yet to experience immeasurable pain. He came this far, feeling as if he was just being executed by dismemberment. Xiao Qiye hugged Shen Zequan. Shen Zequan's nape, which had once radiated seduction, had turned deathly pale. The man himself looked like a cloud lying across the night. Xiao Qiye stayed close to him, hugging him so tightly that it hurt. Are you cold? Xiao Qiye asked in a whisper. Shen Zequan was a little slow to react as he nodded his head. He tilted his head, pressing his cheek against Xiao Qiye's cheek. That heat warmed him up, making him seem a little more human. He reached out his hand in the darkness to stroke Xiao Qiye's arm, feebly and slowly. Xiao Qiye turned his hand around to hold Shen Zequan's hand, interlocking his fingers tightly with Shen Zequan's. He gave all his warmth to Shen Zequan. His chest, being the most scalding, pressed against Shen Zequan's back, as if he could dissolve Shen Zequan away with the heat. He seemed to be harboring Shen Zequan in his arms, no longer permitting anyone to get close. He clumsily licked Shen Zequan's wound. This was his way of healing. He did not want this person to be in pain ever again. Qiao Tianya has gone to look for Shifu. Shen Zequan's eyes were dark and gloomy. When will he be back? Soon. Xiao Qiye squeezed Shen Zequan's hand and repeated, soon. Shen Zequan said, I can't wipe the blood clean. Xiao Qiye said, we have both embarked on the way of the Azure, the bloody path of carnage. We have no more need to be clean, as long as we're together. Shen Zequan pursed his thin lips slightly and said, I. He paused, dazed, as if he had forgotten what he wanted to say. Listening to the sound of the rain, he closed his mouth again. Xiao Qiye pinched his tightly clenched mouth open and asked, what do you want to say to me? Shen Zequan turned his head hastily, refusing to let Xiao Qiye look at him squarely in the face. But Xiao Qiye grasped him by his jaws to prevent him from dodging and asked once again in a lowered voice, what do you want to say to me? Shen Zequan's face was pale under that gaze. He opened his mouth several times but could not bring himself to speak. Xiao Qiye gazed at him, until a long time later when he finally heard Shenzequan say with a sob, "It hurts." Xiao Qiye cupped Shenzequan's cheeks and raised his face. Shenzequan looked as if he had returned to the time when he was a child. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he repeated, it hurts," over and over again with his lips trembling. Xiao Qiye stroked Shenzequan's hair and wiped his tears with his thumbs. He said, "Where does it hurt? Tell me all about it." Shenzequan broke out into sobs. Even his shoulders were trembling. He was so grief-stricken as he cried, as though he was venting all these years of anguish in this one night. However, he felt as if he had gone numb, he did not know where he was hurting. He clearly could no longer endure this kind of pain anymore. He disconsolately let Xiao Qiye wipe his cheeks. Tears brimmed in his eyes. There was nothing left of all those schemes that spoke of a maturity far beyond his age, only naked pain. Xiao Qiye rolled over and embraced Shenzequan. He took all of Shenzequan into his arms, providing a haven where Shenzequan could remove his mask. They hugged each other tightly. Xiao Qiye listened as Shenzequan cried himself hoarse, like a small animal that had been abandoned, and at the same time, like a battered child who was broken and bleeding. Gradually, Xiao Qiye's chest became soaked through. He caressed Shenzequan's hair, answering again and again, "It won't hurt anymore. I promise. Lanzhou will never get hurt again." End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 98, On the Run. The rain stopped at the crack of dawn, where heaven and earth appeared like a vast, murky expanse under the intersection of light and darkness. Qizuyan trod on muddy water and withdrew from the military grounds. She secured her armed guards and looked at her own deputy general riding his horse into the camp. Her deputy general's name was Qi Wei, a strong and sturdy man who was also cautious by nature. He could hoist an axe on the battlefield and hold a needle off the battleground. He was a man of prestigious standing amongst the troops in the army. Qi Wei dismounted midway and hastily nodded in acknowledgement to the soldiers at the sides of the road who were paying their obeisances to him. He headed straight to Qizuyan's side and said, "Commander-in-Chief, we've received news." "Chu capital or Bianjun?" Qizuyan asked. "Both." Qi Wei was not a tall man. He looked around and reported, "Chu capital was caught in a sudden bout of rain and got completely washed out. The second young master of the Xiao clan fled in a hurry with 20,000 imperial army soldiers and have already arrived at the border of Zongbo. Looks like he's going to Tse province." Qizuyan was not at all alarmed. She tightened her arm guard and let out a vague smile as she bit down on the rope and said, "That lad sure runs fast. First there's the case of the military provisions and now there's the encirclement of Xiao Qiye with the intent to kill. The Prince of Libei will no doubt fly into a rage this time." Following Qizuyan as she walked, Qi Wei continued, "If Libei revolts, we will have to set up additional garrison troops in the 6 prefectures of Zongbo. The Zongbo troops will also fall under the commander-in-chief's command and governance." Qizuyan put on her outer garment and said, "Zongbo is such a big place. Even if they transfer them all under my command, I wouldn't dare to accept it. The Chu capital matter is not urgent. Tell me first, what exactly happened to the garrison troops of Bianjun Commandery?" Lu Guangbai fought an ambush all the way into the Biancha's home state. A hesitant expression materialized on Qi Wei's rugged face. He said, "Commander-in-Chief, General Lu disregarded military orders this time and chased the Biancha cavalry across the border. I suspect." He fell silent and did not voice the words out loud. Qizuyan said, "The military provisions this year have been reduced by half. It will be tough for Bianjun to hold out based just on that. I signed a memorandum of debt with the Yan clan of He province under father's name. The money is meant to be set aside to buy grains for the Bianjun garrison troops. So what's with this suspicion you're telling me about? I will not listen to a word without proof." Qi Wei knew that Qi Zuyan valued her generals and had always been fair in meting out rewards and punishments. She would never trample upon them because of a mere few words. But it was also because he noticed something odd when he went to Bianjun to scout this time that his suspicions were aroused. Not daring to hide it, he truthfully said, "Commander-in-Chief, I wouldn't dare to say a word if I had no proof. The purpose of this trip to Bianjun is to investigate military intelligence from a few days back." But not only did General Lu did not return to camp, he even transferred away the garrison troops at the fire beacon towers. Qi Zuyan stopped in her tracks. She looked at Qi Wei and asked, "He transferred away the garrison troops at the fire beacon towers?" Qi Wei nodded. He was just about to go into details when he heard a commotion at the side. Both of them turned aside and saw a whole new bunch of people clustered around a sedan with embroidered borders pouring into the camp. They were stopped by the guards. Upon hearing that the guards were adamant about not letting them enter, Yang Shi could not help but lift the curtain personally and said in a shrill voice, "Don't you know who I am? What's the reason for stopping my sedan? I'm the army inspecting censor that His Majesty dispatched over from the Chu capital. Go announce my arrival, quick. Tell Commander-in-Chief Qi that I have something important to tell her." Qi Zuyan watched from afar and said to Qi Wei, "Go tell him that I'm busy and don't have the luxury of time to see him. All these eunuchs from Chu capital are the same. Just offer him good food and wine and tell him to keep his mouth shut and not cause trouble. I'm going to the Bianjun commandery now. Lu Guangbai is not one who will turn into a deserter. Before I return, tell those from Chu capital that I'm not around. It's troubled waters over there. Keep a close watch on father, too. If he sends a message to Chu capital, intercept it and tell him to behave himself." Qi Wei had more to say, but Qi Zuyan had already flipped atop the horse. Before she left, she looked back and said to Qi Wei, "The matter in Chu capital would need at least half a month to settle down. No doubt the wedding next month has to be delayed. Remove all those red silks at home first. They all cost money." Without further ado, after saying her piece, she led the men to skirt around Yang Shi's sedan and headed straight for Bianjun commandery. *****. Shenzequan drank the medicine. His illness gradually showed signs of improvement along the way. The imperial army was to continue moving in the northeast direction. They had to think of a way to convince Tse province's prefectural prefect, Zhou, to let them pass through. But before that, they still had to shake off those pesky and persistent troops pursuing them. "Han Jin is the one leading the pursuit behind us. Tantai who carried his blade and sat all huddled up on the rock. If we can't repel him back before we arrive at Tse province, then he will use the deployment order to force Zhou to seal off the city and trap us within Zongbo with our retreat paths all cut off." Xiao Qiye folded his arms and said nothing. There was a rudimentary map in front of him. Xiao Qiye was not at all afraid of trading blows with Han Jin, but he had to consider the timing, too. The longer this drags on, the less advantageous it would be to the imperial army. It was only because Chu capital was presently in a state of chaos due to the lack of imperial air that Qi Zuyan had not been deployed and sent troops to encircle and take him down. By the time things settled down in Chu capital and the capital got a hand free to mobilize Qi Zuyan to pursue and capture them, these 20,000 soldiers of the imperial army would be on a collision course with a wall of metal armors. Fighting with them is not difficult, but what we need to consider is the speed of battle. Shenzequan's pale face had yet to recover its rossiness. He picked up a stone and drew a few lines on the ground. "Han Jin dared to chase us this far because there is Dan City behind him. To the 8 great training divisions in his hands, the granary of Dan City is just like a wide open door. They don't have to worry about food and clothing. Our 20,000 men ran all the way here in one breath without stopping. We have no army provisions to sustain us. If we want to get to Libei through Tse province, then we must first resolve this issue." Tantai, who was still not used to looking at Shenzequan face to face. He fell silent for a moment, Then he looked at Xiao Qiye. Without looking at him, Xiao Qiye said, "Spit it out if you have something to say." Tang Jiuqing changed his sitting posture. Pointing at the ground with his finger, he said, "Tse province and us are old acquaintances. Can't we get Jiuqing to let us borrow some food for emergency use first with the excuse that there was a delay in them getting the news?" No, Shenzhequan let go of the stone. At this juncture, all the actions taken implies taking of a side. Jiuqing may not have the intent, but as long as he does it, then Chu capital would view him as a traitor who provided aid to the rebel forces. After we pass through Tse province, he will be taken into custody in Chu capital to be impeached and punished. Jiuqing has his family to consider. He won't do this. Ding Tao looked up from his book and said, "Chen Gur went to make arrangements for the military provisions, didn't he? He must be rushing on his way back to us now. The military provisions he prepared have already been dispatched to Libei. It's Libei armored cavalry's food at the front line. There isn't that much surplus left to fill the stomachs of the imperial army." Xiao Qiye squatted down and examined the map. Even if he and Gu Jing come, they won't be able to bring much food. As the saying goes, food and fodder should go before troops and horses. Back then, Libei and Qidong were able to swiftly beat back the Bianchi cavalry because the Bianchi cavalry had no reserve supplies and could not afford to fight a war of attrition. And now, the imperial army was caught in the same dilemma of having gotten stuck in between and similarly could not afford to fight a war of attrition either. Striking Tse province down might be an option, but it was definitely a bad one. They had successively spent close to 100,000 taels of silver on Tse province to foster a cordial relationship with Jiuqing as a sign of mutual cooperation, and that had been done as a safeguard for the future. How about turning back and attacking Dan City? Tang Jiuqing pondered it over. Dan City has a granary. We won't linger for long in the city. Just take the grains and leave. We can negotiate everything else with Jiuqing when we arrive at Tse province. No, Shenzhequan let out a soft sigh. Dan City has direct military routes to Chuan City and Chu capital. Turning back is to give Chu capital time to dispatch the remaining 8 great training divisions. The journey back will take up our time and deplete our energy, and we might not necessarily be able to take down the city swiftly, either. It was humiliating for Tang Jiuqing to have both of his proposals vetoed by Shenzhequan. He rubbed his hands together and said nothing more. His elder brother, Tang Long, was a brave man who was also a general, but Tang Jiuqing had no one to teach him. At this moment, he was feeling embarrassed and awkward, but deep inside, he was convinced by those analyses. He was not an unreasonable man. At the very least, he was willing to admit that he was unrefined in this matter. Xiao Qiye seemed to have an insight into Tang Jiuqing's mind. He lifted a hand to pat Tang Jiuqing on the back and said nonchalantly, "There may be a time constraint for counter-attacking Dan City, but it is a good idea. You have only fought once in the past with the 8 great training divisions on the streets of Chu capital. Now that you've left the capital, just ask away if there's something you don't know. In the future, there will be plenty of moments where you will be needed to lead the troops and make decisions, and you won't have His Excellency Shen around every time to give you pointers. Lao Hu, the sea of learning knows no bounds. It is with the willingness to take a tumble and have fun in spite of it that you will have a bright future ahead of you." With the muddy soil on the ground already drawn into a mess, Shenzhequan looked up at the sun and said, "Han Jin is a descendant from Chu capital who usually only rides horses on the hunting grounds. So, he won't be able to catch up to us for the time being. We can plunder Han Jin's food provisions with an ambush here." Xiao Qiye surveyed the surroundings. "We won't even need 20,000 men. He's afraid of you." Shenzhequan's fingertips were stained with a bit of mud. He continued, "He has been hesitant and timid in his pursuit of us all this while. To let him fall for the ambush, we will need a bait first. I'll lead 500 people to wait here for him. There is a river of silt to the east, backed by mountains on both sides and close to the forest on one side. Lao Hu will lead 2,000 people to lay in ambush there. Xiao Qiye wiped the mud away from Shen Zequan's fingertip. Ding Tao will bring some men to the town along the way tonight for food and wine. Say that the imperial army has fled here, and they are all demoralized because I'm too poor to buy grain and I can't get out of Zongbo either, resulting in many of them turning deserters. Han Jin was young, and he had interactions with Xiao Qiye during the time that the public ditches were clogged. Shen Zequan was right. He was indeed afraid of Xiao Qiye. In fact, there were very few among the noble young masters in Chu capital who were not afraid of Xiao Qiye. Xiao Qiye's physique and character had already made him a veritable tyrant long before the autumn hunt. The Nanlin hunting grounds was a watershed. With their fathers and elder brothers looking out for them, it would be a breeze for direct descendants like Han Jin who were not the eldest sons in their family to enter officialdom. They seemed no different from Xiao Qiye, yet they had never stood out the way Xiao Qiye did. Perhaps he would pursue Xiao Qiye with caution because of his misgivings of the latter, but he would definitely not pass up the chance to defeat him. As long as Xiao Qiye showed him a weakness. Other than these. Shen Zequan considered it for a moment and said to Ding Tao, "You also have to say that I don't get along with the Marquis and have had so many disputes with him on the way that we are going our separate ways. We are in a difficult position both internally and externally." Xiao Qiye bared his teeth. "Make it out to be as tragic as you can." Ding Tao swiftly took notes in his book. Not feeling reassured, Tan Taihu asked, "Can Tao Sui act? Say it once for us here first." Ding Tao rubbed his eyes and held up the book with both hands to read. "My master is in such a miserable state, doomed as he was by those people. The 8 great training divisions keep pursuing us relentlessly like dogs, so much so that my master doesn't even have money for porridge. When we left the Chu capital, we were fleeing for our lives, so we didn't have time to pack up all those manors and shop, and we didn't even take the money from the residents. Our pockets are now as empty as sheep poop. Master even owes the ear ornaments shop at Chinwu Street several thousand taels of silver, and there's no way he can pay it back now. His Excellency Shen fell severely ill after getting caught in the rain, but we have no money to call for a physician. Alas, a poor coup, His Excellency has forsaken my master, too. Our soldiers and horses are now on the run on empty stomachs. I'm too hungry. I'm so hungry that I'm regurgitating bile. I really can't take it anymore, so I took a few brothers to rob some houses along the way to cobble together some money for ourselves. We were originally all good men from decent families, and it's all because we followed the wrong person that we were forced into such a corner. Now we are filling up our stomach a little before we continue on our way to seek asylum with Han Jin in Dan City. Han Jin is good. He has money and grains. It's only by throwing out lot with him that we will have a future. The future is," Ding Tao read with great emotion and feeling. "This master thinks that was pretty well said." Xiao Qiye commented. "Lao Hu, strip off his little robe and smear mud all over his face. Then give him 3 strings of copper coins and hurry him on his way. There's no need to eat and drink in a tavern anymore, just beg for alms along the streets in the town. What are you looking pitifully at Lanzhou for?" End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 2, Other Heroes of Chaos. Chapter 99, Thank You Gift. Han Cheng captured several deserters from the imperial army one after another. All of them were covered in filth and were so starved that they looked sallow and emaciated. After making several inquiries, he found out about the predicament the imperial army was in. However, he still did not dare to act rashly and advance his troops without careful consideration. This was because the imperial army composing of 20,000 men was not a small number. He was continually weighing his chances of winning against Xiao Qiye in a head-on battle. The imperial army's performance at the Nanlin hunting grounds was out of the ordinary. They killed a considerable number of people when they vied with us for the city gate patrol back then. Han Jin sat inside the tent and looked at the deserters below. Now that you people have followed Xiao Qiye into defecting from the capital, how can you simply just break up at the drop of a hat? Replying to your excellency, we can't go far. The army deserter who was kneeling at the foot of Hanji's seat said, we fled all the way here, far away from civilization with no villages or shops in sight. We have no food nor camping site. Chse province lies ahead of us and there's also the Qidong garrison troops if we look south. It's obvious we are going to be caught in an encirclement like a dumpling being wrapped. Hanji thought it over for a moment carefully and asked, are there many deserters? The deserter said, when I fled, there were about a few hundred. The imperial army is now like duckweeds in a muddy ditch that will scatter at just one strike. It won't be able to withstand a blow. Han Jin wondered, and Xiao Qiye didn't think of a way. I heard that he strictly enforces military law. The soldiers under his command are all very afraid of him. Your Excellency doesn't know this, but, having spoken for so long, the deserter swallowed his saliva and said, can you give me some rations first? I fucking ran for the entire way, and I'm now so starving I can't explain it clearly. Han Jin motioned for the men to give him some rations, and the deserter began to gobble it down on the spot. As he chewed on his food, he said, they are afraid of him. In the past, we brothers had nowhere to go in Chu capital and so we had no other choice but to follow him, and we ended up offending the various masters of the 8 great training divisions. Now that he even went on to become a traitor, how would we still dare to continue following him? Han Jin noted that all these deserters did indeed seem to be down and out. What's more, they were captured back. It did not look like they were faking it. He could not help but make some mental calculations carefully in his mind. First, he got the men to take the deserters out. Then he began to deliberate over the battle strategy in his tent with his advisors. Among the advisors was a man called Gao Zhongxiang, who had been the person taking the lead back then when the Imperial Academy had stirred up a disturbance. As he had offended Pan Rugui and was thrown into prison with no one to vouch for him, he gave up the idea of an official career and threw in his lot with Han Jin. He was a high-spirited scholar full of patriotic fervor who abhorred traitors to the state all his life. Shen Wei, Pan Rugui, and the likes were all men he held in contempt. And now, hearing that Xiao Qiye had fled the state after carrying out an assassination, he was even more worked up, unable to condone it. Gao Zhongxiang pointed at the map and said, since Xiao Qiye is already at the end of his rope, we cannot tolerate him being on the run within Zongbo's territory. The viceroy has a strong army with sturdy horses and Dan City to fall back upon. In my view, there's no time to lose. We will be able to deploy troops to pursue and attack him shortly. As long as he is captured before he enters Tse province, it'd be a meritorious service rendered. Han Jin was still hesitating. He said, but Xiao Qiye still had more than 10,000 men and they are all real soldiers who have been through the Nanlin hunting grounds incident. If there's a trap. Gao Zhongxiang did not think the same. He said, the soldiers of the Imperial Army are demoralized and they are all not of one mind. There's no difference between 10,000 men and one man. They are now just a random group of disorganized men, they are nothing to worry about. The viceroy had already pursued him all the way here. If we can't capture him as soon as possible and bring him to justice, we won't be able to account for it to Chu capital either. This urging pretty much stirred Han Jin as he asked, what should I do if he's in cahoots with the prefectural prefect, Zhou Gui, and hatch a plot to do me harm? Gao Zhongxiang said with slight urgency, Viceroy, that Zhou Gui is a man with a family. Would he cast aside a decent official position to plot a revolt with the traitor Xiao Qiye? He won't dare to. If we dispatch troops now, we will definitely catch Xiao Qiye by surprise. Then we can follow up the victory and press home the attack, and we will be able to return in triumph. Han Jin had been sleeping in the tent for days in a row and was already displeased from all the mosquitoes and bugs bites all over his body. He was still thinking of Chu capital where his eldest brother, Han Cheng, had aided the Empress Dowager in gaining control of the government. The glorious rise of the Han clan was right before him. It was just the perfect time for him to return and call up his friends and associates for a lavish celebration. The longer he stayed here, the more irritable he became. So right after hearing Gao Zongxiang's words, he weighed over the pros and cons and promptly agreed. The next day, Han Jin woke up early and led the troops onwards while there was still dew outside. Using the information provided by the deserters, he followed the trail to the forested area outside the river of silt. There were earthen stoves dug all over the forest, but not in a way that could provide food for 20,000 people. Han Jin thoroughly believed the deserters' words now. With his spirits soaring, he drew his blade from where he was on his horse and brandished it forward, saying, "The traitors have no way out now. Search the forest all over. We will surely find their traces." The soldiers of the 8 great training divisions surged forth. Xiao Qiye was squatting by the stream, washing his face. On hearing sounds, he looked back just in time to see Han Jin spurring his horse over. The moment Han Jin saw Xiao Qiye, he hurriedly bellowed, "The traitor is here. Catch him quickly." Xiao Qiye whistled to summon Lang Tao Xuejin. The smattering of 500 men all seemed to be in a panicked fluster, shouting and yelling as they were chased through the forest. On seeing the situation, Han Jin could not help but get all fired up. He laughed out loud a few times, then shouted from afar, "Your lordship, to think you'd fall into such a state today." Xiao Qiye ignored the soldiers and fled away alone on his horse. Han Jin was afraid he would make his escape and hurriedly led his men in hot pursuit. The 8 great training divisions charged through the forest, following Han Jin towards the northeast at full throttle. The more Han Jin ran, the more anxious he became. He shouted after him from behind, "Xiao Qiye! You're already at a dead end. Surrender yourself quickly." Xiao Qiye looked back on horseback and led his men in an attempt to resist, but they were no match for the 8 great training divisions' ferociousness. The sight of the 500 men being chased was a sorry sight to behold. In the blink of an eye, they had already fled out of the forest. They made a beeline towards the river of silt, where they were finally boxed in at the side of the river. "Xiao Qiye!" Han Jin reined in the horse and waved his sleeve. "Look around you. It's all soldiers from my 8 great training divisions. You're currently besieged and under attack on all sides. So, what are you still struggling for? Beg for mercy now, and I'll spare your life." Lang Tao Xuejin dug its hooves where it stood. Xiao Qiye said frostily, "You want me to die, sure. I'll just ask you one question. Why didn't Han Cheng come himself today? My eldest brother is currently the noble regent, with weighty and taxing official duties to attend to. How could he come here to deal with you?" Han Jin pointed at Xiao Qiye with his sword. "If you get off your horse to await capture, your Xiao clan will still have a slim chance of survival. You alone committed such a heinous and grave mistake, yet you are willing to let your entire family pay for it with their lives now. I've indeed made many mistakes." Xiao Qiye nodded slightly and looked askance at Han Jin, "But it's not your Han clan's place to talk about it with me." The moment the words left his mouth, several hundreds of people suddenly climbed to their feet from both sides. Tantai who took the lead and completely surrounded Han Jin from behind. Leading the soldiers from the back, he slashed away at everyone he saw, throwing both men and horses off their feet into utter confusion and a crushing defeat. Han Jin's guards on his left and right were all Jin Yue whom Han Cheng had assigned over to protect Han Jin. On seeing this, they realized that they had fallen for the trap and immediately raised their whips to hit Han Jin's horse in an attempt to lead him to break out of the encirclement from the side of the forest. Where had Han Jin ever seen such a battle array before? He was pretty much an expert when it came to past military exercises held at the Chu capital military grounds. But he had never truly fought in a battle before. He was already totally frightened out of his wits. The pain jerked the horse into action, and it broke into a mad dash towards the periphery of the encirclement in the forest, with the Jin Jiu forming a protective circle around it. With his blade in hand, Shen Zequin stood in the shadows of the tree and looked at Han Jin. Han Jin still wanted to charge on ahead, but a sharp-eyed Jin Jiu deftly reined in the horse. Under cold sweat and fresh blood, the group of people exchanged eye signals with each other. Eventually, the man at the head spoke, "Vice Commander. It's affinity that leads us to encounter each other today. How about letting us go on account of our past comradeship?" Shen Zequin had lost a lot of weight in the past few days. The wrist bones on the hand he was grasping the blade with looked just like a crescent moon peeking out in an icy-colored arc from that plain white sleeve opening of his. His eyes seemed to harbor solid ice that never melted throughout the seasons, yet a smile infused with the warmth of spring gradually materialized on his face. He said, "I do understand that the various brothers have been entrusted by another with this mission and, therefore, had no choice but to do it." That man knew Shen Zequin was malicious and ruthless by nature. So, when he saw him reveal a smile, he shielded Han Jin and took a few steps back instead. The thunderous sound of fighting and killing filled the air behind him. Xiao Qiye was also closing in on them, one step at a time. Sweat trickled down the man's temples. He said, "Your Excellency has a bright future ahead of you, so why follow a traitor and suffer untold hardships here? If you are willing to release Viceroy Han back to the capital, the Commander-in-Chief will definitely forgive and forget past grudges and welcome you back to the capital." Unexpectedly enough, Shen Zequin chuckled. His voice was clear and unhurried, and he was a pretty sight to behold when he smiled. That pale skin of his looked extraordinarily delicate under the speckles of sunlight. Very slowly, he drew out his blade, scraping Yang Shanshue's slender and long blade against its sheath. "I'm very grateful to Han Cheng." Shen Zequin backhandedly grasped hold of the hilt and paused. "Words cannot express the extent of my gratitude towards him. When you return this time, please bring him a thank you gift on my behalf." Han Jin felt a chill on his back and nearly tumbled off his horse. *******. Xiao Qi rinsed away the blood on the blade at the edge of the water. Shen Zequin squatted at the back to clean his hands. He buried his entire palms into the stream. Even when Xiao Qi was done washing his blade, Shen Zequin still did not remove them. Xiao Qi squatted opposite Shen Zequin. He was much taller than him, but he could still put his head against Shen Zequin's. Both men's palms met in the water as Xiao Qi grasped hold of his fingertips. Shen Zequin's sobs seemed to be a mere dream of the night, seeing as how he was clean and composed under the sunlight. Very slowly, his index finger stroked along Xiao Qiye's hand and made its way through the gap between Xiao Qiye's fingers. His palm fitted into Xiao Qiye's palm, bringing along with it the icy cold softness of the water current. Tantai, who was presently leading the men to clean up the battlefield. They still had to stay over for a night in this forest. There were soldiers not far away all around them, but Shen Zequin's hand clung to his, as if he was nonchalantly playing with it. At the same time, it also seemed like a seduction that was planned long in advance. He still had the stench of blood on him. Xiao Qiye let him do as he wished and said, "You left only one soldier alive and sent him back. He might not necessarily be willing to bring the message back to them." Shen Zequin looked at the shimmering surface of the stream and said, "He's a Jin Jiu. As long as he is still alive, he has to complete the mission. Han Jin has fallen into our hands. If he doesn't bring news of it back, then he has failed in his mission. He's going to die anyway, might as well die with a little more dignity. Furthermore, the heads in that burlap sack are all those of Jin Jiu on the job with an authority token. He has to bring his brothers home." Xiao Qiye wanted to wipe away the droplets of blood on Shen Zequin's wrists, but there were people all around. Both of them gazed at each other for a moment. He suddenly grasped Shen Zequin back, then slowly leaned forward and said, "The earring dropped in Chu capital. I'll make a new one for you once. We arrived in Libei. You still have an outstanding bill of several thousand taels of silvers." Shen Zequin looked at him. Tighten your belt and make some money first, second young master. I can marry into a rich family and pledge myself in marriage in exchange for money. Xiao Qiye lowered his voice. Propping himself up against the soft sediment at the bottom of the stream, Shenzequan whispered into Xiao Qiye's ear, 500 taels for one night. That bit of enchanting sensuality had yet to pervade the atmosphere between them when Shenzequan suddenly looked back with a stern countenance and said to Tantai who had wanted to go over but did not know what posture he should adopt to walk over, Han Jin must not have brought plenty of provisions along this time, considering that he had been thinking of going back to Chu capital the soonest possible and that he had Dan province to fill in whatever he was lacking. Have everyone cook all those provisions tonight. Tomorrow morning, we. Shenzequan stopped abruptly for a moment. He swiftly cast a sidelong glance at Xiao Qiye before he continued, we'll continue on our way to the northeast. Xiao Qiye said nothing and washed the handkerchief in all seriousness, all the while conveniently caressing Shenzequan's hand that had been covered under the handkerchief until it turned a shade of light red. End chapter.